Welcome to section 4 of Psalm 119 on judgment. The next three after this will be the law, commandment, and word. The judgment or judgments. If it's a judgment, the word 29:17 is krima. Krima, like a crime, comes from that, a derivative. A judgment, generally it's with a negative response. You've been judged guilty, more or less. There might be some exceptions to that, I'm not sure, but generally it's a negative response. But now it can also be in the plural, judgments. And judgments are different in that they are like a statue. The judgment has been made and it has become law. In some cases, it's they're judgments. It's not an action going on. It's also, krima can be used in some places as a lawsuit or a case. I have a case against you. And then as far as like behavior, it has to do with equity, if you're equitable. The judgments are more of a statue. Then there is a state of being a certain thing that's krima, a distinguishing manner, or a practice of some sort, or a responsibility. These are all synonyms that are used for krima. English also has words that have synonyms like that, such as the word of acting. An acting, it could be an adjutant officer. He's acting in place of the main person. Then he's acting, a deputy could be acting in the place of a sheriff. Then there's also acting in plays. You're an actor. So the English has the same type of thing where you can have the one word and different meanings within it. Now, judging or judgment. Now, who judges as far as the Bible is concerned? In Psalms 147:21, it says, he did not do thus to every nation, and his judgments he manifested not to them. So basically, the judgments were given by God. We'll go later find out where that was, but the judgments were not given to the nations. Now, there was a judgment against the nation, so it gets kind of confusing because it can be used in two different ways. He didn't give the judgments. He made those for Israel, special judgments, but judgment against the nation he did do. It's first mentioned with the 70 elders in Exodus 18:22, when the sons of Israel left into the wilderness. They left Egypt, and Moses' father-in-law came, Jethro, and he told Moses that he was going to kill himself, trying to judge all these different problems that everybody had, and to appoint 70 elders that would be judging. And then the congregation was to judge. In Numbers 35:24, when somebody did something, then the congregation would judge over that infraction. Psalm 72:2, it says, O God, give your judgment to the king, and your righteousness to the son of the king. The kings judged and made judgments. David in 2 Samuel 8:15, it mentions, and Solomon in 1 Kings 3:11. God in 1 Chronicles 16:12 says, remember his wonders which he did, his miracles and the judgments of his mouth. Now, these are the judgments that he gave to more or less to Israel. In Psalms 9:17, it says, "The Lord is known by executing judgments," but also by judging, but that didn't say that. "The Lord is known by executing judgments. By the works of his hands the sinner is seized." And in Psalms 19:10, it says, "The judgments of the Lord are true, doing justice to the same." And these are the judgments of the Lord. Psalms 97:3, "There is a cloud and dimness round about him. Righteousness and judgment are the success of his throne." And we will find out more about the judgment of the future a little bit further on down here. Also, the priests and the Levites could judge. In 2 Chronicles 19:10, it mentions them. Also, scribes, and there are judges, of course. In Ezra 7:25 and 26, it mentions them. In the future, Israel, in Ezekiel 44:24, the sons of Zadok, a future priesthood, will be the ones that are judging. And then in Daniel 5:16, Daniel is a judge, it mentions. And in Daniel 7:22, it says, "The old one of days be God to the holy ones of the kingdom." I'm sorry, that's not the quote. The old one of days gave the judgment to the holy ones of the kingdom. This was at the time of the four beasts that was mentioned in Daniel. The judgments were given on Mount Sinai to Moses. Nehemiah 9:13, it says, and upon Mount Sinai you went down and spoke to them from out of heaven and gave to them right judgments and laws of truth, orders, and good commandments." So here we see that God gave these judgments. In Malachi 4:4, it says, "Remember the law of Moses, my manservant, insofar as I gave to him in Horeb," which would be where Sinai was, "for all Israel, orders and judgments." But Israel rejected these judgments. It says in Nehemiah 9:29, "And in your judgments they sinned, which a man doing them shall live by them, and gave their back unto resisting persuasion, and hardened their neck, and hearkened not." Now, there are also bad judgments by different groups or situations. In Exodus 23:6, it says, "You shall not turn aside a judgment of the needy in his judgment." So if there was a poor person and he won the judgment, you should not turn it aside because he doesn't have any money. It's easy to coerce him or do something else. That was not to be done. Psalms 146:8, it says, "The one executing judgment to the ones being wronged, giving nourishment to the ones hungering. The Lord unties ones being shackled." So this is the correct way for the judge to act. In Isaiah 10:2, "A turning aside equity of the poor, snatching away a judgment of the needy of my people, so that a widow would be to them for ravaging, and an orphan for plunder." And that was what they were doing. One of the main things that they did that God disliked, outside of their pride and outside of the idolatry. In Matthew 7:2, Jesus says, "For by what judgment you judge, you shall be judged." So how you judge, it's how you're going to be judged. And then in 12:40, he says, "The ones devouring the houses of the widows and make an excuse for praying long, these shall receive extra judgment." So now there's the judgment versus the judgments. Romans 2:3, it says, "But do you think this, O man? The the one judging the ones doing such things and yourself doing them, that you will flee from the judgment of God? And so when we judge somebody and we're doing the same thing, that's not a good place to be. The judgment of death was on Jesus. In Isaiah 5:16, there's a portent of that, and it says, "And the Lord of hosts shall be raised up high in judgment, and the holy God shall be glorified in righteousness." Now, where was he raised up high in judgment? It says in Luke 24:40, "And how that the chief priests and our rulers delivered him up unto the judgment of death, and they crucified him." Then Jesus will also is a judge and will be a judge in different ways. It says now in Isaiah 16:5, another portent of the future with Jesus, I believe, "And a throne shall be set right with mercy, and one shall sit upon it with truth in the tent of David." Now, David was long gone by Isaiah. He's going to be judging and inquiring of equity and hastening righteousness. I believe it's talking about Jesus Christ there. Ezekiel 37:24, he says, "And my servant David will be ruler in the midst of them." Again, David is long gone, but Jesus will be the one coming, and there will be to one shepherd for all. "For by my orders they shall go," excuse me, "and my judgments they shall keep, and they shall do them." And then in John 9:39, Jesus says, "For judgment I came into this world, that the ones not seeing shall see, and the ones seeing should become blind." Then there was a judgment against Israel. It says in Jeremiah 46:28, "You should not fear, my child Jacob, says the Lord, for I am with you. For I will appoint consummation among every nation in which I led you out of there. But in no way will I appoint to cease, you to cease. But you in no way will I appoint to cease, and I will correct you in judgment. But I will not acquit you as innocent." And now in Ezekiel, there are many judgments against Israel. You can go into the app up here above that will be showing, and you can go to number 2917, go to Ezekiel, and you'll see all the judgments against Israel. But the judgments were not only against Israel. It mentions in Jeremiah 51:9, "We medically treated Babylon, and she would not be healed. We should abandon her, and each go forth into his land, for her judgment has approached unto heaven." And then finally in Zephaniah 3:8, it says, "On account of this, wait for me, says the Lord, for the day of my rising up," for a testimony, or the rising up again. "For my judgment shall be for a gathering of nations, to take kings, to pour upon them all of my anger, the anger of my rage. For all the earth shall be consumed by the fire of my zeal." The judgments and the judgments. Now we can go up to our app, Apostolic Bible app here, and you can see, I'll read a few of these as I did in the last three or four videos. "I shall confess to you in uprightness of heart, in my learning the judgments of your righteousness," the judgments of your righteousness. What are the righteous things that God would have us to do? And they're mentioned many places in the law, and Jesus also mentions the things of righteousness. "With my lips I will declare all the judgments of your mouth." And with Jesus, the judgments doesn't say the judgments, but the things would be like loving one another and obeying the commands of God, and things like that. In Isaiah 119:21, it says, "My soul longed to desire your judgments at every occasion." And Psalm 119:31, "The way of truth I took up, and your judgments I did not forget." Now, the judgment doesn't necessarily say it's a judgment, but when God decides something, what you should or you shouldn't do, he's making a judgment and setting it down as a law, which we'll be going into either one of the next two verses, commandments or law. I'm not sure which one comes first. Now, you can read the rest of these, go into the app and find out all about them. Again, we're going to be going through this whole chapter at the very end. So our next seminar is either commandments or law. I believe it's commandments. Hope you join us.